This is Yosemite. This is also Yosemite. One of them is buried under 300 feet of water, and almost nobody watching this knows it's down there. In 1913, Congress let a city destroy part of a national park. Not damage it, not develop a corner of it, destroy it permanently. It has never happened before or since. The valley was called Hetch Hetchy. John Muir, the man who did more than anyone to create America's national parks, stood there himself. He called it a remarkably exact counterpart to Yosemite Valley. Some who had seen both valleys believed Hetch Hetchy was even more beautiful. Congress had already declared, in law, that it would remain protected. They flooded it anyway. 300 feet of water, gone in less than a decade. The man who fought hardest to stop it died almost exactly a year later. People who knew him best believed the loss had broken him. Today, nearly 4 million people visit Yosemite every single year. Almost none of them know another Yosemite exists, inside the same park under the same legal protection Congress once established. Still there, still underwater. This is the story of the only time America broke its own promise to a national park. The fight to undo it that never truly ended. And the question this country still hasn't answered more than a century later. What is a national park actually for? Long before Hetch Hetchy became a battle in Washington, it was simply a place people called home. For generations, Sierra Miwok families moved through this valley with the seasons, gathering acorns, fishing its river, and living within a landscape their ancestors had known for longer than anyone could trace. The Yokuts, Washoe, and Paiute peoples knew it too, as part of a vast network of land stretching across the Sierra Nevada, long before the region appeared on any American map. The name Hetch Hetchy itself most likely comes from a Miwok word describing a grass with edible seeds that once covered the valley floor. This was never empty wilderness. It only became wilderness after the people who knew it best were pushed out of the story. The first Americans of European descent entered the valley in 1850. Not long afterward, John Muir arrived. He described Hetch Hetchy as a grand landscape garden, one of nature's rarest and most precious mountain temples. For decades, he devoted his life to making sure the rest of the country understood what he had seen. In 1890, that work paid off. Muir's advocacy helped persuade Congress to create Yosemite National Park. Hetch Hetchy was included from the very beginning. This wasn't a footnote tacked onto the bill. It was written in as the same promise, in the same law, on the same day. Protected in perpetuity, just like Yosemite Valley itself, only 15 miles to the south. For a few years that promise held. Muir genuinely believed the hardest battle had already been won. Yosemite existed. Hetch Hetchy was inside it. The law was clear. Or so it seemed. Nearly 300 miles away, another story was unfolding. San Francisco was growing faster than its water supply could keep up. City leaders began searching for a source that could sustain generations to come. When they looked at a map among the possibilities, one valley stood out, already protected from private development, surrounded by granite, fed by snowmelt, perfect for storing water. Most people saw a sanctuary. They saw a reservoir. What followed would become far more than a dispute over one beautiful valley. It would test something America had never been forced to answer before. If a place was declared protected, could that promise ever be broken? San Francisco's interest in Hetch Hetchy did not begin with an earthquake. It began years earlier, with a mayor named James Phelan, who filed the city's first application for the valley's water rights in 1901. Federal officials rejected it. The land was inside a national park. That was supposed to settle the matter. Then, in April of 1906, an earthquake and the fires that followed tore through San Francisco, killing an estimated 3,000 people and leaving much of the city in ruins. The disaster changed the argument overnight. A city that had been told no now had a story the entire country could sympathize with. We need water, and we need it to never fail us again. Hetch Hetchy offered exactly what the city believed it needed: deep granite walls, a natural dam site, and gravity alone to carry water more than 150 miles to the coast. The opposition was immediate, and John Muir was far from alone. The Spring Valley Water Company, San Francisco's existing private water supplier, fought the plan because it stood to lose its business entirely. Farmers in the Modesto and Turlock irrigation districts fought it too, worried a dam upstream would threaten the water rights their crops depended on. More than 200 newspaper editorials across the country came out against the proposal. Muir turned the Sierra Club into what became America's first truly national conservation campaign. Letters, petitions, pressure on senators who had never expected to vote on the fate of a valley they would never see. He wrote to a friend describing one Sierra Club meeting where members, in his words, fanned each other to a fierce white heat over the fight, urging everyone they knew to keep letters flying to Congress, thick as storm snowflakes. For years it worked. Session after session, the bill stalled. Congress declined to act. But San Francisco did not stop asking. In 1913, a new administration took office, a new session of Congress convened, and a California congressman named John Raker introduced the bill once again. This time, it passed. Muir and his allies had won almost every battle in this fight for more than a decade. They were about to lose the war. By 1910, the debate had grown far beyond California. What began as a dispute over one mountain valley had become a national argument about the future of America's public lands. Newspapers across the country took sides. Editorials questioned whether land placed inside a national park could truly be called protected if Congress could simply change its mind whenever the pressure became great enough. The debate reached Washington, not as a quiet administrative decision, but as one of the most closely watched conservation battles the country had ever seen. At its heart, the argument was surprisingly simple. Should a national park exist for the people who needed its resources, or for the generations who would one day inherit it? John Muir believed there could be only one answer. If Congress could sacrifice one protected valley, then every protected landscape in America had become negotiable. Across the country, supporters flooded lawmakers with letters. Conservation groups organized public meetings. Newspapers urged Congress to reject the proposal. For many Americans, Hetch Hetchy had become more than a valley. It had become a test. San Francisco answered with a different argument. The city was rebuilding after catastrophe. Its population continued to grow. Officials insisted that securing a dependable water supply was no longer a matter of convenience but of survival. Both sides believed they were protecting the public interest. That is what made compromise almost impossible. For 12 years, America argued over a single valley. When the vote finally came, it was about far more than water. It was about what the word protected would mean from that day forward. On December 19, 1913, President Woodrow Wilson signed the Raker Act into law. For the first time since the national park system existed, the federal government agreed to let a city permanently flood land inside one of its parks, land Congress itself had promised, only 23 years earlier, would remain protected forever. Construction on the O'Shaughnessy Dam began soon after. It would take nearly a decade to complete. Piece by piece, the valley floor Muir had once called a mountain temple began to disappear beneath rising water. The meadows first, then the lower forests, then the last dry ground at the base of the granite walls he had spent his life trying to protect. Muir did not live to see it finished. He died on December 24, 1914, almost exactly 1 year after the bill that doomed the valley was signed into law. Officially, the cause was pneumonia, but the people who had stood beside him through decades of fighting for America's wild places came to believe something else. That watching Congress overturn the one fight he could never win had opened a wound in him that never fully closed. There is no way to prove a broken heart killed John Muir. It was never a medical diagnosis. It was simply what the people closest to him chose to believe about what the loss of Hetch Hetchy had cost him. But here is what can be proven. 3 years after the Raker Act passed, in 1916, Congress created the National Park Service, a federal agency created to better protect America's national parks, its mission shaped in part by the lessons of Hetch Hetchy. Muir lost the valley. The movement he built did not lose the war. By the early 1920s, the O'Shaughnessy Dam was complete. Hetch Hetchy Valley, the second Yosemite, the place some who had seen both considered the more beautiful of the two, was gone, sealed beneath water that has not receded since. For most people, that's where this story ends. For most people alive today, Hetch Hetchy has always been a reservoir. It is difficult to mourn a place you have never seen. Before the water came, the valley stretched for nearly 3 miles beneath towering granite walls. In spring, waterfalls spilled from the cliffs after the Sierra snow began to melt. The Tuolumne River crossed wide green meadows before winding through oak groves and dense stands of pine. Wildflowers covered the valley floor. Black bears, mule deer, and countless bird species moved through an ecosystem that had evolved there for thousands of years. John Muir walked these meadows himself. He climbed these cliffs. He camped beside the river. When critics argued that Hetch Hetchy was merely another valley, Muir answered with unusual force. He wrote, "Dam Hetch Hetchy," as well dam for water tanks, the people's cathedrals and churches, for no holier temple has ever been consecrated by the heart of man. To Muir, this was never a fight about water. It was a question of whether some places should remain beyond the reach of human convenience. Ironically, very few photographs of Hetch Hetchy survive compared with Yosemite Valley, not because it mattered less, but because history stopped looking at it after the dam was approved. Today, anyone standing along the reservoir sees only the surface. The meadows, the river, the forests, the granite floor, Muir knew still exist beneath it. Hidden beneath the water, but not erased. Most people watching this assume the story ends there. It doesn't. Stay with me. If the valley is still there, could it ever be brought back? For most histories, the story ends here. The dam is built, John Muir dies, the valley disappears beneath the water. Except, that isn't where this story ends. For 7 decades, the story of Hetch Hetchy seemed finished, a loss absorbed into history taught in passing as the price of a growing city. Then, In 1987, someone with real federal authority asked a question nobody in power had seriously asked in more than 60 years. What if it could be undone? Donald Hodel, serving as Secretary of the Interior under President Reagan, proposed studying whether the dam could be removed and the valley restored. This wasn't an activist's dream. A sitting member of a presidential cabinet was asking the federal government to examine tearing down infrastructure that supplied water and electricity to one of the largest cities in the country. The proposal went nowhere. San Francisco's dependence on the reservoir had become too deep, too politically entrenched, and too expensive to unwind. But the fact that it was raised at all, from inside the government itself, proved something important. This had never actually been settled. It had only gone quiet. Decades later, the question returned once again, this time not from a cabinet secretary, but from the voters of San Francisco themselves. In 2012, a ballot measure asked the city to formally study draining the reservoir and restoring the valley. San Francisco voters rejected it, 77% to 23%. The people who depend on that water every single day looked at the same question their city first asked in 1901 and answered it almost exactly the same way San Francisco had for more than a century. No. The valley is still there, under 300 feet of water, exactly where it has remained since the 1920s. And the fight to bring it back, quiet for years at a time but never completely gone, is still right now not over. Today, the organization carrying that unfinished fight is called Restore Hetch Hetchy, founded by conservationists whose work grew directly out of the Sierra Club's original campaign. Their argument has not changed much from John Muir's. Their tools have. Engineering studies, water supply modeling, economic analysis, all built to answer the one question San Francisco has refused to seriously entertain since 1913. Could the water the city depends on be sourced somewhere else, so the valley itself could finally be allowed to breathe again? Their conclusion is yes. Other reservoirs already exist within the same regional system and, with significant investment, could be expanded to make up the difference. It would not be simple, it would not be cheap, but according to the people who have spent decades studying the numbers, it would not be impossible. The state of California has never formally acted on those findings. What the campaign has managed to do instead is keep the question alive. Actor Harrison Ford has narrated films supporting the cause. Journalists covering America's public lands continue to return to Hetch Hetchy again and again, holding it up as the clearest example in the country's history of a national park being sacrificed for a single city's benefit. Every few years, the proposal resurfaces somewhere. A legislative hearing, a ballot measure, an opinion piece written by a former interior official. And every time it runs into the same wall it hit in 1913. A city that has built its modern water system around this one valley and sees no reason compelling enough to give it back. 15 miles south, Yosemite Valley remains one of the most visited natural landmarks on Earth. Crowded parking lots, timed entry reservations, millions of photographs taken every single year. 15 miles north, its twin sits almost entirely alone. A handful of hikers reach its shoreline each year, walk beside a reservoir where a valley once stood, and most still do not fully understand what they are looking at. The story was never hidden from them. It just stopped being told somewhere around the middle of the last century, and nobody picked it back up. It would be easy, at this point in the story, to make San Francisco the villain and leave it there. The truth is more complicated than that. A serious investigation has to sit with the complication instead of skipping past it. The Hetch Hetchy Reservoir does not simply stand as a monument to an old fight. It is, today, supplying drinking water to roughly 2.7 million people across the Greater Bay Area. Because that water travels from the High Sierra entirely by gravity, with almost no need for energy-intensive pumping, it is also remarkably clean and remarkably inexpensive to deliver compared with most major urban water systems in the country. The same system generates hydroelectric power along the way, providing renewable electricity to San Francisco's public infrastructure, municipal buildings, the airport, and the transit system, without burning fossil fuels to do it. Replacing all of that is not as simple as finding another lake. It means new infrastructure, new pumping stations, higher energy costs that the current gravity-fed system was specifically designed to avoid. It also means asking millions of people to trust that a different water system will be as reliable as the one that has served their city for more than a century. This is why, in 2012, when voters were finally given a direct opportunity to study draining the reservoir, they rejected it by nearly 4-1. Not because they didn't care about the valley, because the water flowing from their own taps mattered more, right now, than a landscape most had never seen and likely never would. That is the real shape of this conflict. Not a story of a city that stole a valley out of greed. A story of a country that has never fully decided what it is willing to give up once something beautiful has already been made useful to somebody. So which mattered more, the water or the promise? By 2012, San Francisco had its answer. Congress never really gave one. More than a century ago, Congress made a promise it did not keep. Not because the promise was written poorly, not because nobody understood what was at stake. 200 newspapers understood, farmers 300 miles away understood, and a grieving city, still counting its dead after an earthquake, understood something too, that it needed water more than it needed to keep a promise to a valley almost none of its residents had ever walked through. Both of those things were true at once. That is what makes this story worth telling, more than a century later. It would be simpler if Hetch Hetchy were a story about villains. It is not. It is a story about a country discovering, for the first time, that the word protected did not mean what people assumed it meant. That a promise made by one Congress could be undone by the next, the moment the right city asked hard enough. That discovery permanently reshaped how America protects its public lands. The National Park Service exists, in part, because of what was lost here. But existing is not the same as undoing the loss itself. The valley is still there. It has remained underwater for more than 100 years through a cabinet secretary who asked whether it could be restored, through a ballot measure that answered, "Not yet," and through every quiet decade in between, when almost nobody was asking at all. It is still there while you watch this. Somewhere beneath 300 feet of water lies the granite valley John Muir believed was the more beautiful of the two, waiting for a decision this country has never quite been willing to make. Not because people forgot what was promised, because remembering has always been easier than giving something back. Whether that debt should ever be repaid is not a question history can answer for us. More than a century later, the question remains exactly where Congress left it. Should a promise to protect a place last forever, or only until something else becomes more important? So, should a 100-year-old promise ever be broken to solve a problem its founders never saw coming? Tell me where you land. History is full of places we've forgotten and stories we've mistaken for finished. Here, we keep looking. If that's the kind of investigation you enjoy, consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next one.